everyone, I'm Omeed. I'm a host at SaaS Buyers Club.
Hey, I'm Joe. I'm your co-host.
And we're here with Christine McDannell from the Magnolia Firm. Thanks, Christine, for joining us.
Yep. No, of course, Omeed. Excited to be on.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself? You know, what you do, a little bit about who you are. Would love to hear from you.
Yes. So I live in sunny San Diego, which I love. I've moved away a couple of times, even overseas. I always come back here. I've been an entrepreneur, business owner for almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years in December. Time flies when you're having fun. I've had 10 startups. I've exited. And then an additional 10 to 15 company, like either acquisitions, roll-ups inside my startups or business flips. Like I flipped a couple spas during COVID. So yeah, it's been a fun ride. I don't have kids, so I have a lot of time to do this kind of stuff. And it's my favorite hobby in the world. So I read, eat, breathe, sleep, business. Like I love it.
That's awesome. And yeah, I mean, we know you from before, so we know that you have a lot of this really great business experience. Why don't we focus in and touch in on a little bit about what you're doing now with the Magnolia Firm? Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this has been exciting. An M&A boutique firm was something I wanted to do way down the road. Like it was my retirement plan. It was like, oh, I can help people exit. So all my businesses, except the very first one, I did all the transactions. I needed a broker on the first one. I was in my 20s, didn't know what to do. And I just repurposed that purchase agreement, which you guys as lawyers are not going to like hearing. But, I'm not giving legal advice, and I have a very, very high tolerance for risk. So I'll start by saying that. And even on my largest exit, so I started doing all my own deals. And even though my largest exit, I used that purchase agreement. And then I didn't even want to use a lawyer. And even my mentor was like, what the heck? You need at least to drop 7K and get a lawyer on this transaction. I'm like, oh, no, I don't need a lawyer. So again, do not talk with Joe and me. They are the experts. Do not do what I do. This is not advice. And, and I didn't use a business broker. Even for my spa exit, I went to two brokers. I went to the original one from back in the day, and then I went to another one, and they both valued my company at literally half. And they said I couldn't get a penny more. And I actually got my full asking price, all cash, within 5 weeks. And of course, I had to email both of them and tell them that. So yeah, that's been my ride so far.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so just on the purchase agreement thing, yeah, that's something we hear a lot. But honestly, with our experience with you, what I see is that you had a lot of confidence and knew what you were doing. Could tell the risks that you were facing and getting yourself into and kind of were able to pull through it. On more complex transactions, I'm sure that you'd be like, hey, I need to tap in a lawyer on this one. And similarly, we definitely tell people get a lawyer, don't sell yourself short. But that makes sense because of you sold 10 businesses yourself or had 10 exits.
Yeah, and so you're right. If they're more complicated, you'd have to bring in an M&A attorney. And with all my clients, just so you know, I'm always, and even when I was doing the purchase agreement on my deals, I'd always tell the buyer, you have to take this to a lawyer. Take this to a lawyer. Have your lawyer review it. Always, right? Because I don't want them to be like, she just made this purchase agreement up. And I'm always big on that. All my clients always get lawyers on both sides just to review, and create the purchase agreement.
No, that's cool. That's great.
I'm surprised you don't have a friend because the other side of the story that we hear is yeah, I didn't want to pay a lawyer. My brother-in-law is a corporate lawyer. So I just send him the purchase agreement and ask him to advise us on it pretty much. I'm surprised you didn't have that. That's something that we hear a lot too.
We had a recent one. She's a younger seller, and the father had an attorney friend, and it was a mess. She didn't do a good job, to be honest. But I'm sure they got a discount or something, right? So I have a very close girlfriend here in San Diego, and she's our attorney for the company. And then we refer her out a lot for the contract reviews. So I tell my seller, because again, the buyer drafts the purchase agreement. They spend all the money. My seller just has to have a lawyer review. So she actually does a lot of the review for our clients. And then for me, she bills me normally. And even if we're out, hanging out, I'm like, okay, Kayla, I'm not asking put me on the clock. I try not to bother her with free legal advice ever. I'm just unless it's super quick, right? Otherwise, I'm like, put me on the clock. Here we need to do this. So we have a lawyer for all our stuff now. Yeah, our stuff's dialed in. I'm not goofing around anymore.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. It's just, yeah, it's definitely a thing people do, and you're able to judge, when it's necessary. So, like, digging a little bit more into the Magnolia Firm, what do you guys specifically focus on in the M&A space?
Yeah, and then I feel to kind of finish the story as far as launching. I had a couple girlfriends that in 2021 they were exiting. They brought me on as a consultant because they knew I did my own exits. And then I just loved it so much. So they're like, you got to do this for real. At the Magnolia Firm, it's funny because my spa from 11 years ago, that was like the runner-up name. It was Eco Chateau, but the other name the branding agency came up with was the Magnolia House, which is really pretty. So all these years later, I finally got to use the word Magnolia in my company name. Yeah. And then we just boom out the gate. It was so insane. I closed 5 deals. I opened in October 2021. I closed 5 transactions, one of which was my own, one of those spas I flipped in the month of December. It was so crazy. But again, obviously it was working. And then a year later, I brought on my business partner, which I'm sure you guys are planning on having Khaled on later on an episode. But I brought him on a year later because I just had a wait list and it was just, which again is a good thing, right? But we're just growing in a space that needs innovation. So there's this like wide open gap of like, just needs this like innovative company, has a young team, gets it, like vibes with all our clients. Our clients are young. So our youngest exit, I believe, was 21-year-old, and the oldest was 47, which is not old, okay? And I got a lot of Gen Z that works on our team, and they're brilliant. And so, yeah, that's kind of been that's the reason I started. That's the start of the Magnolia Firm.
That's awesome.
And digging into that like a little further, previously you were working with businesses that had 120K SDE. It sounds like you probably have, shifted up market at this point. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And to Joe's question too, is what types of businesses? These are all digital-based businesses, remote. We do international. Mostly it's US based, but we've got a couple clients in other countries. But usually those are US buyers. So you're talking about digital marketing agencies, digital graphic design firms, PR firms, CRM integrator agencies are insanely hot right now. Like we unloaded 4 super fast. We have a 5th that went market 1 week ago. And I just like literally, I know I was apologizing because I was 5 minutes late to this because we just had a killer like seller interview where the buyers are flying out to New York already. And the deadline's in 2 weeks. So we've got multiple, we're expecting multiple offers on a couple of these new listings. So it's a hot seller's market. Keyword is cash flowing businesses. Okay. If something is cash flowing right now, hot. If it is not, then it's a rough market. And I know we're going to talk about VC and funding and all that fun stuff and the fallout that happened there. But yeah, so that's kind of the types of businesses. And then your question, Omeed, I keep answering questions out of order.
It's okay.
What was yours?
My question was SDE range for the businesses that you work in. Because I know previously when you launched, it was 120K. And I would assume that because you have a waiting list of clients that you're working with, it probably is increased.
Yes, we went up market like overnight from like 300K purchase price to 3 million purchase price, like boom, overnight jumped. But my heart is still with small business because a lot of people won't take those clients on. So just recently, I had a girl who was going to give her company to her employee for free. She happened to call me. I was like, I could get you 200K cash like within a couple of weeks, which I did. 220 cash closes this month. Another one we had recently, the guy wanted like 20K. I got him 220. So again, if I know, the smaller deals are honestly probably harder than the bigger ones. But if I know I can sell it quickly, I'll take it on. And again, because nobody else is going to take them. So I've done a couple smaller ones just recently. And then our team's going to start doing those, right? I just trained somebody, on a low six figure. So he's handling it. We added him to the team. So yeah, up market, it's easier, to be honest. So our sweet spot is 3 to 5 million right now, purchase price.
Okay. Do you think you'll keep moving up market, or is this where you want to stay?
That's a great question. So my reasoning was like, I'm curious. Again, we only have 2 years, right, of history. So it's hard for me to kind of gauge everything quite yet. Because I was like, oh, can I crank out these smaller ones, because the commission checks are still great. So like, how many small ones can I crank out versus, a larger one? Like, how long is the larger one going to take? And these ones are going so fast. So I'm like, okay, the larger ones make more sense. Now, what ends up happening when you start having companies, and again, these are companies netting out EBITDA of 600K, 800K. That million, there's like that million EBITDA that everybody wants. I want a company that, and even the brokers and M&A advisors, you need to at least have a million in EBITDA. You need to have, but honestly, it's so saturated right there. So I'm kind of like, or 10 million and above purchase prices. Like everybody's trying to get those deals. And we're expensive. Like I tell everybody, like we're pricey. We're white glove service. We don't take a lot of listings on. We sell them real quick. So we charge more of a percentage. So again, when I start doing the math with the guys that are charging a lower percentage on a $10 million deal versus what we charge on like a 3 or 5, it's almost the same. So I was like, you guys go fight over those. I'm going to stay in my little wheelhouse.
That's really cool. I have a small follow-up question there. I've got a real good picture about, okay, what are you guys up to for the audience and stuff. So if somebody, a seller, had a $15 million, $25 million business that was actually going to be valued and sold at that number, would you be somebody they'd want to talk to?
Oh yeah, no, we have one, they're still their numbers dropped a little bit. So they're working on scaling back up because they went 25 million. So they were going to sign with us, but they're like, hey, timeout, numbers are decreasing. And then it's going to mess up the whole deal, right? So they're not at market yet. That one's 25. We've had 10 to 15 approach us. So yeah, we could do the bigger deals. Like there's nothing holding us back from that, right? So we still have those approach us. But yeah, right now, the largest, 4 million is the one we have right now that's about to go. Sold a 3.5 very quickly. So that's just this like sweet spot for us. And then there comes a point, I don't know if it's over 20 million or 50 million. Then we need to get FINRA, we need to get different types of licensing for the way larger deals. That's like the IB, the investment bankers are usually doing those deals. But
there's like $100 million level up for one thing. And
yeah, I don't remember. So, but Khaled's gung-ho when you, and write this down to talk to him because he's gung-ho on going to get every single certification.
He wants to be an IB. He wants to be, like Khaled, I could see that. I could very much see that.
Which I am down, he's super smart and he loves learning. So I'm like, go for it. That's not my style. I'm more of like a salesperson, visionary, like let's just like ready, fire, aim. But he also wants to take M&A. He wants to take M&A lawyer courses. I mean,
I could totally see that too.
It's like, you can't become an M&A attorney. And he's like, no. Like, he goes, no, I just want to like learn it enough to understand it. Like take a couple courses, not go get his law degree. Or like, what's going on?
I have a few follow-up points there. I was just really loving what you were saying. I hear that about him. We'll have that chat with him. It's definitely it's kind of like saying you want to be a doctor. It's like, I wouldn't that's like, that's like 8 years later. About what you just said there, I hear you that so if somebody did have a larger deal, then they could bring it to you. That's similar to how our firm works. We're actually, we've moved, we started off at big transactions, $100 million plus. We really like servicing, very similar actually. We really like servicing the low end market. So 500K to 5 million is how we define it. But we have a $100 million transaction right now, actually. I think it's like 91 million or something. And so, we take a variety too, very similar there. One thing that you said though, separate to that, so just closing off that part about, what you guys do. One thing you said though was really awesome, which was that, talking about that one deal where they wanted something and the financial performance wasn't there. So they're going to take it off market and put it back on at the right time. It's that type of information and other information in that same ballpark that is super valuable for sellers to know as they're thinking to themselves, especially first-time sellers, even second, third-time sellers, like they're still just getting their feet wet and don't know everything. That's something that is new information or is really valuable insights for them when they're trying to sell their business. Because it is one of those things, if you don't meet the criteria, you're not selling your business. Even if you think the business is doing great, I love the business, surely somebody's going to buy it. That's just not how it works. It very much so is a process. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that there and get into more of your thoughts regarding, what are the good criteria, or what maybe checklists do you have regarding selling a business, or any of that type information?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I'm glad you asked that question, because that is important for everybody listening and watching, is like that's always their what they're wondering is like, what are the key things, a buyer would look for? What's super important to be working on right now, even though I don't know when I'm going to exit, like, let's get it together now. And to your point of growing, when you're going to list. So obviously when you're on an upward trend, it's amazing because, people are going to pay a little bit of a higher multiple and it looks really, really good. And, even one of the $3.5 million listing we sold in March, I mean, he was having his best months ever. He's netting out 100,000 a month. And he's like, oh, it's so hard to sell right now. But again, he knew like this is the best time to sell. It looks really good. And, and he cashed out and he got all cash. So he's a happy camper. But
why did he want to sell?
10 years in, he was burned. He was excited about a new project he was already working on. So in 10 years and, burned out. But of course, he literally hit his biggest month ever on net as it was listed. And he's just like, oh, so hard. Yeah. So that, but again, he's rode off to the sunset. Great buyer. He didn't have to stay, just a couple months of training. And so, yeah, rode off to the sunset. Actually had a quick side story, had a $500,000 EIDL loan, those COVID relief loans that are like free money. It's like 3.25% interest for 30 years. And so he had that. And then it was the SBA loan, and he didn't want to pay it back. It almost blew up the whole deal. He's like, well, I don't want to give this free money back. I want to use it for my other business. And a lot of times you can transfer it, which is kind of cool, or you can have the buyer assume it, which is really also cool. We've done that. That's ninja stuff in the past. It actually works. But in this case, SBA was like, no, the buyer's using SBA loan. You have to pay it. Out of 3.5, we're going to give you 3 million. We're keeping 5 for the payback of the loan. And yeah, he was not happy and just was borderline about to kill the deal. And I was like,
and
oh,
how did you massage that?
Well, first off, the problem is it's the winner's curse. So we got him a buyer in 3 weeks flat, full price. And it was higher. It was
too easy.
Yeah.
It was too easy.
So he's like, oh, Magnolia Firm, you could do this again. And me and Khaled were like, oh my God, such a gamble. Like, what if we don't get him that much? Right. So fine. I'm like, you're getting 3 million cash. Like, come on now.
Yeah. You got what you asked for. So.
Yeah. You got to pay that back. So, but I get it. If it was me, I was kind of like, oh, I'd want to keep it too, but we just couldn't move it. We tried. Anyways, at least we tried. So yeah, that was a fun little deal there.
And then the way that he got to the place where he was okay with selling, did you explain that process of like?
Yeah, again, he was excited about his next venture. He had the company for 10 years. So yeah, he was ready to cash out and, he made a great living. So he already had, a good amount of money already, but to just cash out, take your chips off the table and have that liquidity event of 3 million. I'm not saying you're going to retire on that, right? But it is cool to be able to jump into a new exciting venture and have that money in the bank.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that Joe and I often talk about in our conversations is what we call the exit sweet spot. And for so many sellers, the exit sweet spot is, when they're doing super well potentially. And what I'm hearing in this story is that the seller kind of recognized maybe early that they were burned out. And so they didn't let it get to the place where the burnout was negatively impacting the business. It sounds like at the first sign of burnout, he was like, you know what, 10 years, I got this other thing, I'm out. Is that kind of how it was?
No, I mean, that's a great, great point. You do not want to be at the burnout. That if you're already completely burned out, when you come to us, I'm like, oh, because it's just such, like I always say, and I'm like a marathon runner. It's like you ran 23 miles at 26 and you're about to sprint 3 miles, right? At the end. And like, if you're already burned out, it's super difficult. It's as hard as the startup phase, in my opinion, is exiting, right? Getting all the stuff together, and it's like emotional roller coaster. And that's even with us like handling so much, it's rough. It's a lot of work. regardless. And so, yeah, you do not want to be burned out already. And even mine, I just would get these feelings because everybody's like, oh, do you plan on exiting in a certain years or a certain price? Nope. It's always just a feeling. I'm just like, yeah, I'm not as excited. Usually it's because everything's already like systematized. So I got managers in place and automations and they don't really need me and I get bored. So I'm like, okay, I'm ready to sell, on board. And it's not fair to your clients, not fair to your team if you're completely burned out over it. And then people want to shut down. There's a thing called deal fatigue, which I have one right now. Again, we got them an offer within 3 weeks and they're so stressed right now.
You're just too good at what you do, Christine.
No,
That's what it is.
If I was better,
You just
they
make it too easy. That's what it is.
But I'm like, how they have massive deal fatigue where now the buyer's kind of wavering on the price and they're like, okay, fine, just give in, Christine. I'm not going to give in. I'm just like, no, like, why are you guys deal fatigue right now, 3 weeks in? And I go, so like, sometimes it takes months or years to sell business and don't like give in, like stay strong. So yeah, to that point, everybody listening, please do not get burned out. Just like the first kind of signs of it, give yourself a month. That was always my rule of thumb because you're gonna have shitty days where the employee doesn't show up and you're pissed off. I want to sell the company. So I always gave myself a full 30 days. I'm like, if I am over this company every single day for 30 days, then it's time to list my company.
That's cool. And yeah, thanks, Omeed. So, you touched on something really important there, which we have a goal of educating people of sellers, again, talking about sellers here, as part of their process, is to plan in advance for the sell event. Sure, like you're saying here, it can just be a feeling. But on the other hand, like if you kind of sit back, we had one other guest we spoke with that did a journaling exercise that let him sit back. Like you're saying, there's a month rule you could have. There's a journaling exercise. What do you want? And what we like to communicate is you have to really set down your own goals and think about what your future is with the company, because it's really easy to tie up your identity with the company and not really start thinking about time coherently anymore. And as part of that process, and there's so many things there to talk about, but as part of that process, one really important thing is to sit back and think to yourself, okay, how much can I get? Is that sufficient for me? And what do I need to do in advance to get there? Because it's a process selling a business. You can't just, and we see this sometimes with sellers and they're not ready. They're selling a business. And I'm referring to when we're representing the buyer. They're selling it, but the business is not ready to be sold. They don't have their financials in a row. We have a couple of those even right now, or they're still finishing their books. It's kind of like, why are we here? I get it. We support it. We're on the team. We're on team. Let's close. We're on team. Close the deal. But on the other hand, it's like, why are you guys? You guys should have prepared this. What else aren't you prepared about? It kind of leads down a dark path. So we say to people, prepare that type of stuff even in advance so that you're not in a rush at the time to sale and you're just like overloaded. And so if you're already fatigued or burnt out at that time, now you're getting doubly overloaded. Sure, there's work anyways, but if you can phase it out in advance over time, like get your books in a row, not at the last minute, which is not a good way ever to do it. If you can do things like that, it makes the process just like smoother. It's like, the professional way of doing it.
For sure. I'm curious, what percentage of your clients are buyers versus sellers?
Oh, currently it's probably 80%, 90% buyers.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, historically it's been 50-50. Right now, over the last year, we've focused in a lot on this new buyer phenomenon, acquisition entrepreneur type concept. It's all over the internet. And so we represent a lot of those type of people. Historically, we've represented the traditionals, so private equity buyers, and that's what we do now, representing private equity buyers, bigger sellers, So that's what we do on our side.
Awesome.
So there's synergy there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love that. Yeah, because the buyers too, sometimes they don't even have any lawyer. And so we double side most transactions. So most our buyers are not represented when they come across our listing. And I actually love that. And especially when they're first time buyers leaving corporate hell. I'm like, yay, come to entrepreneurship. So we do that. And I love doing that. But then again, I'm always like, hey, you got to go get a lawyer over there. Of course, I'm here as a mediator and I'm here for win-win, and we're going to figure this all out together. And there's less cooks in the kitchen, so I prefer that there's not representation as far as a broker on the other side. But yeah, must have lawyers. And then, like Joe, let me touch a couple points when you were talking about this plan. Okay. Again, our clients are young, so they're not retiring anytime soon. They're not, so they're like they're dovetailed already into the next venture, typically always. And they don't have the skill set. They could take a business, from 0 to 1 million or 0 to 5 million, but they don't have that skill set to go beyond that. Every single one of them admits that. They know it. It's a different skill set, myself included. I'm like the startup person. I'm not like the scale it to 20 million a year person. So they're cashing out, taking some chips off the table, going to the next venture. I do have one right now that they're retiring out. They've had the business for like 20 plus years and they're getting their pension. Like they just have this great plan already completely dialed in of like, okay, here's how much we have to sell our company for to completely retire alongside of our pension. So that's super cool. That's a first. And then some friends of mine were like, hey, I'm going to stick 500 million in this investment vehicle that's going to spit out about 10% a year, so 500K, you can live on that. Right. So people start doing that math, or 1 million, like, let me put 1 million in this vehicle and I'm getting 100,000 a year. I can live on that. And that's really cool. That makes people very comfortable where they're like, okay, this is cool. All my expenses are paid. So there are people planning and doing it that way, but that's far and few between.
Yeah. On that, it sounds like you have something else to say, but on that, it's like, that's totally my perspective and point. It's that there's a science to that process, and we like to tell people to follow it because, in other words, financial planning, especially part of the exit in advance. When you're a founder or an entrepreneur, like you're doing all not just the dirty work, you're like so much into your own universe that it's hard to have that boring financial planner perspective and plan and believe in it because you're so used to believing in I'm going to take over the world type mentality. But it's vital. And like your experience right now with this one client, that is something that everybody, well, hopefully everybody, at least the successful people, they learn it eventually and they do it around the time of retirement eventually. But it's something people should definitely be doing in their 20s and 30s. I went to school with a lot of financial people who ended up being bankers and finance people and consultants and stuff. So I was always around that type of thing just by, even though I didn't study finance in college.
No, that's great. And you're right. Not enough people, think of this stuff out. And I love what you talked about earlier about the journaling, how the emotions of and is your identity in your company. And so what was happening on a few of the exits, now we fix this because it caught me off guard because this doesn't happen to me because I'm so excited about my next venture. So I don't mourn that. I don't care about, they're like my little kids that go off to college and I'm excited to sell my businesses and excited to see the progress. But what was happening for the first 3 transactions was that they all of a sudden, a month later, they would get super depressed and sad and down and they lost their purpose. And I'm like, this is weird. This is what they wanted, no more stress and all this money and no more employees. And they got that. But what ended up happening, because I actually talked to somebody, here in San Diego, she has her PhD. She's brilliant. She was sweet. And I've known her for years. She was sweet enough to even make a video. So if you go to the Magnolia Firm's YouTube channel, it's on there. It's called How to Grieve Your Business. I think I put on LinkedIn recently. So yeah, it's because she goes, no, this is what's happening. And what's happening is they never grieved it. Because you just had your whole identity tied up, your whole life. You've got a whole team. One of them had 80 employees. You had 80 employees, coming up to you.
It's family, connection, so much goodness,
emails
that.
Coming in. And again, it's the stuff that stresses you out. But when it's all gone, boom, it's like a shock, right? So it's just she kind of walks them through how to grieve when they sell. Now I send the video before and every time my seller's like, no, I'm not going to be sad. I can't wait. Like no more drama. And I'm like, I'm telling you right now, it's going to hit you. And you're just like, please watch this video. One right now is in under contract. She's like, I'm not gonna watch the video. I don't want to jinx it. I'll watch it the day it closes. So we even do mantras. So I have my clients, here at the Magnolia Firm, we could be a little woo-woo. I'm big into
I love woo-woo.
Okay, I'm
I
glad
love Joe doesn't, but I do. I'm 100%.
Wait, no, I love woo-woo.
No, you're like more science based.
Yeah, journal science. Yeah, a little more science.
Oh, okay.
So we have them do like a 1-sentence mantra, like every day. Put it on your mirror in your bathroom, stick it somewhere. I sold my company for $3 million. It closed by October 31st, and it was an easy transaction. Like just a 1-sentence mantra of like, just like put it wherever you can put it. And then going a step further and writing out your perfect buyer, the most detail you possibly can, and actually do it in past tense. So that's this magical thing too. So it's like, I sold my business to this, a female who was, in her 30s, lives in this area, whatever, like as many details as you can possibly put. It was an easy and smooth transaction. And I enjoy, the buyer's great. And my employees stayed, blah, blah, blah. Like the more you can write, the more detailed, the more that helps. And you'd be blown away at some of them they wrote. Well, one of my friends said, I'm going to sell to the first person I pitch. And I was like, okay, Sarah, that's not like,
and then she did.
So she pitched 5 times and the first guy did write the offer.
So it's never how you think it's going to be, but it does end up how you wanted it to be.
I love that type of stuff. But Omeed, back to you. I feel like you were about to ask a follow-up question.
Honestly, I have a million questions about all of the things that Christine has said, like this entire conversation. Like, like one question that comes up is like, who did you learn manifestation from, Christine? Like, who's your kind of go-to manifestation person?
Yeah, never growing up, ever, ever, ever. And it wasn't until like early 20s. So back in my first company, Cleanology, where I was lucky enough to clean houses every single day and bartend at night, because I started the business when I was 23 with $300. I remember being in this really nice condo in downtown San Diego, which is ironic. Now I live down here in like a great building in downtown, which I'm stoked. I'm in this building, this condo, and he had like it was a vision board. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was super weird. I'm like, why does this guy have this like paper with all these magazine cutouts of fancy cars? I'm like, this guy's weird. Like, I swear to God, I didn't know what it was. And I'd say mid-20s is probably like Tony Robbins. And that's where I started going deep. Nowadays I'm probably even deeper into this Joe Dispenza and all these other, like I'm really deep into this stuff and it freaking works. Like I teach vision board classes. That's irony. I literally teach them. Actually, everybody listening, watching, my biggest tip in the world, which I have crazy stories about, is that your wallpaper on your phone, you see so many times a day when you go to your phone. Please put like your number one thing, your dream car. Do you want to travel? Is it love? Maybe put a heart. Just you guys, I should share it publicly of like, I figured out when I put these wallpapers on, I put my dream car, which is an R8, and there was no way I could afford that freaking car back then. And I think it was 13 months I got it. The exact color. It was crazy. Like
what color?
Super rare. It was white with the gray side blade, which is super freaking rare. I knew I wanted a white one, but it was identical. Then I'm like, oh, like, what do I want to do now? Travel. And it was just like a kind of an image of like the world with the Eiffel Tower and Big Ben and a couple other things. And I literally was on a plane. So this is like only 8 months after I put the wallpaper. I'm on a plane from Paris to London. And I happen to open my phone on the plane and I'm like, this is freaking crazy. Like I'm literally, and it's on the phone. And then there was Dubai. So this year on the 1st, I went to Dubai for New Year's, loved it. And I was like, I want to live here for 5 weeks in the spring. I go, I don't know how I'm going to pull that off, but let's put it on the phone. And literally, it's
the magical phone.
Now it's starting to creep me out. I even put a celebrity. So then, yeah, the building on my
totally the phone. Totally the phone.
I'm telling you. And last one I'll say, which after the car, the travel one, I put Josh Duhamel. I had like a crush on him back then, and like he's a celebrity. And my phone was laying out. My roommate saw it, and he's like, "Why do you have Josh Duhamel on your phone?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I've had a crush on him forever." He's like, "Oh, like I know him. Like my ex knows him. Do you want me to introduce you?" I was like, "Okay, guys, no more. This is at this point, it's freaking me out. I do not want to intro this seriously." And my friends are like, "Don't put that in the universe. You should have just went with it." But
that's so funny. You had it on your phone, and then it presented itself, and you didn't want it. What's up with that, Christine?
I know my mentor's mad. He's great at manifestation. He's like, "Don't ever do that because you're like denying the universe, and it's gonna be like, why are you doing that?" So I just was getting freaked out. And the last thing on vision boards, and this is the class I teach, is it's called shower goals. So I've always, every year, I laminate my vision board is laminated in my shower. Because I was like, where will I see it every single day? And you're doing something so mindless that your subconscious is like working on it without you knowing it. And just this morning, because again, we're coming up on fourth quarter soon, literally 70% of mine is done out of the whole thing. It is crazy. And so today I'm like strategizing, like, because there's some big ones left. I'm like, how am I going to do these this year? But, and then my brain was working, right? My subconscious was working. So shower goals, all my friends do them now. It's so funny. Yeah, I just invented shower goals, vision board.
Do you like pre-screen your seller clients to make sure that they're down with these like strategies? Like if someone's like, what are you talking about? I'm not doing that. Like, will you not take their...
No, I've had clients that I'm super big on having amazing clients. Clients I would be friends with or I'd hang out with, right? Oh, we'll talk about ayahuasca. Like me and Kyle, there was one guy, we're talking about ayahuasca and LSD and whatever. Like, I'm like, it's important to us to resonate with the clients. We have a no a-hole rule. If they're an a-hole, all my clients knew I was in Burning Man last week. Like they were so cool about it, even though I had Starlink and Wi-Fi, because I'm in the middle of these deals and deals don't sleep, which we all know that. So I was still plugged in, but they were even like, hey, just unplug, like have fun at Burning Man. And these are some clients were in their 60s and they were like, yeah, right on. So, my clients are super cool. But you're right.
Was that your first? Was that your first Burning Man? Third Burning Man?
Yeah.
I want you to keep carrying on the conversation with me, but I want to ask one quick question, which is, do you have any of your vision board classes on YouTube where I could go watch it and other people listening?
I should load it up. Yeah, I did one locally in San Diego, went really well, or I should just film a new one. I should, because it's just crazy stories. I've told so many. And again, I've dated. I went back recently because I'm like, well, how long did each one take? And I could find the dates of the photos of because I just screenshot the photo, off of Google. And I put it on the phone and I could see the dates. And some of them, it was like 4 months later. I was like, what is going on? Yeah, I should. And I'll do that. I'll share the link if you guys want to add it. I'll commit to that.
No. Yeah. I'm not trying to force you anything, but really, like, I want to watch it. So if you do it, send me the link so I can watch it. I do vision board, but it sounds like there's some things I could learn from your magical phone.
Yes.
Yeah, but Omeed, you were on you had a million questions, and that's a cool subject. Keep going.
And the woo stuff. This thing about resonating with the client, one of them, good old boy from Kentucky, mid 40s, and and like the woo woo, I was like, I don't know if he's just gonna fly with him, but again, I'm like, hey, can you do mantra? Can you do this? And yeah, he did it. And he does believe. He's had some cool like experiences with this kind of stuff. So he's like, no, honestly, I never believed in this shit. But like, I can't do his Kentucky accent. He's like, I never. But he's like,
I never believed in this shit.
Yeah, pretty much. But he's like, hey, I've had experiences in the past where that blew my mind. So he's like, yeah, I'm down. Again, he's the one that sold 3.5 real fast, so it worked.
Hit us with the Magnolia Firm mantra.
Our mantra?
Yeah, like what's one of your mantras?
Ooh, I don't know. There's so much mantras. I would say I have kind of like 5 like rules of thumb, and I already talked, or kind of like values we preach. I already told you about the marathon one. So it's these 5, and I don't know if I have them all memorized right now. Well, time kills all deals. That's one. That's my mantra. That is my number one mantra. You guys, yeah, let's use that one actually, because, and I need to do more videos about it. You guys have no idea how many stories I've heard. Thank God, not our clients, of deals. And I'm sure you guys see it all the time. Deals that blew up at the last minute because maybe the war and maybe COVID and maybe this. And it's like, even Khaled's like, you act like Armageddon's going to happen tomorrow. Cause I'm like, go, hurry up, client, give me this, client, give me this.
Yeah, I mean, I tell Joe all the time, like if a negotiation goes on too long, I'm like, Joe, this is not looking good.
Omeed has a third sense about that, or third sense. He only has two other senses. No, he has a sixth sense about that, where he can intuitively tell. I guess it also has to do with the nature of the deals we're working on right now and stuff, where he's like, hey, something's wrong with this. And a lot of it will come from delays or just the way a seller's or, the other side's acting. As a broker, obviously, you're also in a different position regarding pushing time forward. We try to do that, but let me tell you, one of my pet peeves, you could say, about being an M&A attorney is when you send a due diligence request and it's like you're a banshee or a ghost and nobody sees you and you get no response. And it's like, hey guys, this is literally one of the pillars of a deal. And I just asked you for some documents about the business my client's going to buy. Just give me the documents. And they don't do it. And then it's 3 weeks later and I'm hounding them. And it's like, okay, I'll get you again. And it's like, this deal may not close. I'm not trying to put a nail in the coffin on certain transactions by saying the deal will not close, but it's a huge problem. I hate it.
Yeah. And I have this speech I say over and over again. I should just record it, where I'm like, look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I was like, a bomb can go off tomorrow. There could be a war. This is before the Ukrainian war started. I used to say that. There could be a war that starts. There could be COVID. There can be so many black swan events that can, boom, happen tomorrow. Everything blows up. I knew someone, her thing was supposed to close the day, everything got shut down on COVID, boom. Massive deal, blew up, gone, disappeared. So again, there's so much that every minute counts, in my opinion. So we need to be relentless. And my team knows. I'm like, freaking text, call, email, text, call, email every single day. Those due diligence, I know those are overwhelming, those lists. We've gotten 36-page due diligence lists for a 6-figure deal. I'm going to get on Zoom because they get freaked out. They're like, oh my God, I get on a Zoom. Hey, Julie, let's do it together on Zoom, one by one. Most of this is going to be NA. This stupid thing is for a multi-million dollar. You guys know, I'm like, why are they giving us this due diligence checklist with freaking 36 pages? So yeah, it's just hand holding. So it's just, me, again, we're white gloves. So I'm like, hey, let's get on a Zoom. Even if it's a weekend, I've done that. Let's get on. We're going to go one by one on the questions because they just want to answer them. They don't want to write it out. They don't want to type it. It feels like they're doing their taxes. They want to go sell. Again, these are entrepreneurs that are salespeople and marketers, and they hate financial stuff. And I get it. I'm the same. So we hold their hand and we go. But there was one, I'll tell you, 2 stories. One of them said, I can't believe this. She goes, we were supposed to close. She was finishing her due diligence. We were set to close the next day. The next day we're supposed to close. And it was the last thing she needed to do. And she's like, Christine, I'm so stressed out. I need to take a personal day today. I needed to take an emotional personal day off today, an emotional day off. I said, you cannot take an emotional day off today. You can have unlimited emotional days. We have to get this deal done. You close tomorrow. What is going on? I'm so stressed out. And somebody else, I need to drink wine, a bunch of wine tonight. I'm so stressed out. I'm like, oh my God. I have these little texts, I save them, I screenshot because they're so funny. And I take the names off, but I'm like, oh my God, these people are cracking me up.
No, it's important that you're there for that, walking them through. No, that's your job. That's what you do, and that's what we do too. As a broker, definitely a little bit of different position. There's definitely a boundary from a lawyer's perspective where Omeed and we're definitely converging on the same point of view on this subject. But I'll summarize it in 2 sentences. Omeed will be upfront and in their face and be like, "Hey guys, let's fucking go. This is ridiculous." Whereas me, I have more of that, the white shoe law firm where it's like, okay, I told you, but now I'm, that's the extent where he'll really be there, maybe more emotionally available is the way to put it. I don't know.
Yay, good. I know. I have one. The husband, this was yesterday. The wife was just freaking out. Again, we're sold their company really quick, and they're the ones getting deal fatigue. She's freaking out. I mean, more than anybody. And it's a husband and wife. And she apologized. She emailed me twice yesterday apologizing. Because I was like, look, I told you it's gonna be an emotional roller coaster. Like it is. It's just that, like, we try to soften it as much as we can. So she apologized twice. And now the husband, she's like, look, the husband emailed me. I'm taking over from now because I guess he's less emotional and he's trying to calm her down. They're on speakerphone. I'm like, guys, this is fine. It's not a big deal. Like the deal's going through. I don't know, but they're worried it won't go through. They're like, well, how do we know for sure? And I was just like, well, we don't know for sure. And you have to be prepared if it doesn't, but it's looking good. Like we're good. What is going on?
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Like, cause with you just telling that story, I can really see like just like the ups and downs of the transactions. Do you have any other stories like that? Oh, I really like that. Do you have any other stories around like, again, not naming names or anything, but just like these are really valuable insights like into like what actually people talk about, oh, the terms of, everybody's always like focusing on the terms of financing as if the whole deal has, I mean, not fancy, the financial terms, as if like the whole transaction process is getting good financial terms from a buyer's perspective. But there's so much more to the process. And we always see the emotional jive. I mean, we're all humans. It's there.
Yeah. And so at some extent, it's hard to not be emotional, and I do coach them through the whole thing because myself included. So, I mean, I learned these lessons over the years. Some of them took me a lot of years, but it's like, you don't spend the money before you have it wired. Do not, until the day it is wired, do not have a celebration. Do not toast. I mean, even the LOI, I'm like, I wouldn't even have maybe a little miniature celebration, but I'm like, guys, don't even spend the money in your head because they start doing that. I've done it too. You get all excited. I'm going to buy this. I'm going to buy that. So then you get more let down if it doesn't go through. So I do try to coach them through that. The other thing that was just a recent revelation, it was when I exited the last company, is your burn rate personally goes up because all this stuff you just were running through your company for years. I was running my health insurance, I was running my car, I was running cell phones. And nobody thinks, and again, it's weird. Nobody thinks of this. So I educate people like, hey, your personal expenses are going to jump of whatever you're running through the business. And because every time I sold a company, I forgot. I was like, what is going on? So I know that now.
Oh, those are really valuable insights. We've definitely seen people, let's say, like think everything's guaranteed. Like that's not until, as lawyers, right? Not until it's signed and paid is it over with, right? That's a big one. And that's also really big about like running your expenses through the business. Actually, that wouldn't have necessarily come to mind if somebody had asked me like, what are the financial lookouts of regarding closing? That's a really insightful one too, to kind
And
of
even the tax stuff, because one of the deals right now, we're purposely having big chunk of change is going to come in right now. But then they're in California like I am, and those taxes are ridiculous, capital gains. So they're literally requesting, hey, buyer, can you just give us this chunk January 1st, the difference, because they trust it. It's a smaller, chunk, it'll help cash flow on the buyer, right? Because they're like, oh, cool, I got 3 months, a whole quarter, to pay that later instead of now. And so because they're trying to defer the taxes into a different year, a chunk of it. If we have a transaction closing and like I said, the last month of the year is like insane. Fourth quarter is so hot. So if it's a December closing, we can always split it. If it's like a 31st closing, we could split on the 31st and the 1st to drop, split it in 2 years.
No, that's really cool. Omeed, go ahead, but I really want to kind of get more into stories and stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's actually, I did really love how Christine is pointing to the emotional roller coaster aspect of deals, because I think for a lot of people, when they come to deals, it's as you mentioned, Joe, they think it's like a process. They're really focused on the terms. Like no one actually really anticipates how much goes into the deal in terms of, that up and down that we see. And so Christine did a really great job of highlighting what that process, that emotional process for people can really look like. And I guess the question in there is just like, Christine, I hear that one of the ways that you manage the emotional roller coaster is it sounds like you have really great relationships with your clients and you're kind of just there for them as they need it. But like, what other tips would you have for managing the emotional roller coaster that maybe you've seen, from clients that have done really well in the process, for example? And then the other thing is like, why don't sellers know this stuff? Like,
I don't know. It's so weird. I mean, yeah, I'm super laid back and chill, and I've seen so many of these deals, and I know how they always work out. So I don't like get them all riled up, and I'm pretty like good at calming them down. It's gonna be okay, and they lost focus. So that was this conversation yesterday. She's so freaked out, and she's so stressed right now that their sales went down just a tiny, tiny bit. But during the transaction, I'm like, that is the worst thing that can happen. We told you guys, like, all I care about is you guys grow. Don't get distracted. Let us handle. We handle so much of everything. And then that happens. So it's like, oh, like you're freaking out. It's making it worse right now. So yeah, I would say just try. We're therapists. Like me and Khaled always say, LOI, boom, we're now therapists until it closes. And we are. And he's and I would love for you guys to, like, he's very empathetic. He's way better than me as far as really calming people down. And he's even had some tough clients that are, I don't know. I mean, that's a great question. Like, it just is, I guess it's a lot of money on the line. And it's like, you got the deal, you got the perfect buyer, and now they backed out. We're lucky it hasn't happened much, but I will tell you this, knock on wood, every single time we find a better buyer with better terms. So I'm like, yeah. So I had another one. She was freaking out because it fell through, and she just was like losing it. She's like, I need to drink a bottle of wine and all this stuff. I'm like, I'll figure this out. Like, it's happened multiple times. I'm like, I can't promise this will happen, but we had one drop out a couple months ago, and we found a buyer who paid more money, better terms, faster close. Again, not promising I could do that. And then what do you know? A week later, same thing, all cash. The guy bought, like, he closed in 1 day flat. That was my only deal we did in 1 day flat. It was so crazy.
That's awesome.
It just hurts my soul so much, though, when I see people suffering through the process. It really does. Like, it hurts when I see people like going through that difficulty. And, I see it kind of from the observer perspective where I'm like watching you, like, yeah, just ride that roller coaster. And I'm like, I wish that you could find your footing,
I'm going to read it. Yeah. And it's kind of I know I'll give it away, but it's usually a surprise to our clients. So I always send a fun, like after they engage with us and get started, I send like a cute, like, gift basket that has like soft socks and a candle and tea. And like, I mean, the one guy, or sometimes
that's so cute.
Yeah, sometimes with the guys, it's like, cocktails or bourbon, or like it's a gift set, where they can make their own cocktails and chill out. And my note says, they say selling a business is stressful. It doesn't have to be. This will help keep you calm. We're excited to embark on this journey with you, and thank you for putting your trust in us. So I should tell the people, go back. I'm like, do you need another gift basket? Do you need some more alcohol?
I've honestly thought about it, but like in the show Billions, have you ever seen Billions?
I love that show. Doesn't it start back up soon? It starts back up.
I think it does. But now that Axelrod's gone, like I don't really care for it. Is he back? Is he back? Okay. All right, fantastic. Spoiler alert.
I'm always the guy in the group who doesn't like this show. Everybody's always fanboying about it, and I'm always like, oh, I hate that show.
You've watched it and you don't like it?
Yeah.
Oh.
There's a whole conversation to be had.
This is a whole conversation.
What's going on?
But Axelrod has like a resident therapist to help his team. I'm like, do we need to get a resident therapist on our team that just like that can, handle all this stuff? And actually, one of my homies, Joey Vitale, fantastic. He's a lawyer, business coach. He owns like one of the top law firms for trademarks in the industry. He's like a brilliant entrepreneur. He's like someone that I look up to very much so. And, he's someone that like I'll often consult with and so on and so forth. But he actually I believe he brought someone on his team who has a background in therapy to specifically be a client point person, client kind of relationship manager. And I was like, that's genius. Like, and I see it in Billions, and I'm like, maybe we should do that too. Like, maybe our close rate will go so much higher. Clients would love it because, like, their experience is they have someone like a point person to talk to that specifically addresses that emotional roller coaster.
Oh my God, $1 million idea. I'm writing it down. And again, I've personally worked with Nancy for 3 years myself, and she's like a magician. And anytime, something's coming up in my life, she is so brilliant and like sees things, sees the future, again, a little woo-woo, but she has her PhD and she's brilliant. So she's the one that made the cute video. And I love this. I'm telling her I'm going to gift like a 30-minute, again, the one.
Yeah.
Really
it's like the client calls, they're losing it. It's like, hey, we got something for you. Yeah. We're ready for this.
Nancy, because I don't have a PhD in therapy.
We're therapists too, so we get it. But at the same time, not we're therapists, we function in the role of a therapist, you know. But
certified. But on that, just to I want to pipe in on this with my own perspective. I agree with everything you guys are saying. Just taking it, and for me, it's just putting me in the seat of, a big transaction. There's so much going on, and it's here's some stuff that comes to mind. There's definitely part of it's there's a big gap. You have to really know what understanding and what experience the people do have from where they're coming from. So, for example, if it's a first-time buyer who's otherwise, maybe in his 40s, you can assume, there's certain experience, certain handling of emotions, entering a new experience. And I try sometimes with them to correlate and be like, hey, okay, this is a new experience for you. But, what are some lessons you've learned in your other career? Maybe you were great at, your expertise, right? That's why they're buying a business. Usually they're transitioning their career. So what have you learned there and how can you apply it? So a big part of the mental exercise for me is trying to figure out where they're at. Another part is, going back to what I said earlier of, as a corporate lawyer at a law firm, you're not a therapist. And so I have that ingrained in my head. But again, I agree that it is so valuable and important. So I'm not saying it's not relevant. I'm just saying I'm used to that. And then lastly, I guess another thing that just comes to me just from my prior experience is, I'm so used to being on transactions where everybody knows what they're doing. So if it's a first-time seller, it's a different universe. But if it's a big PE buyer or a big business is spinning off a division, all the people you're working with are professional. There is no emotional melodrama. Maybe some crap happens and people want to have a little tuffle on a negotiation. I'm happy to be there and have that. But that's a completely different ring than where it's a first, second, or, newer seller buyer. So they are different universes. And that's what my mind constantly goes back to. And again, I guess part of my experience, again, is to make clear is we've only recently started working with first-time buyer seller. So it's definitely, from my perspective, kind of a new thing. But I see it and I respect it too. I actually think you guys are hot onto something. You guys are really valid where you're at. And I think you're really identifying something that I'm even or have previously. Omeed's already told me about this. We've already had conversation about this. So this isn't the first time for me, but this is something that for me that I've in the past even overlooked because of my experience just dealing with people who weren't first-time buyer seller. So that's just kind of a little bit about where I'm coming from on it.
No, I love that. And I mean, just this Monday with the team, I said, we need a separate, we have a great engagement agreement. I want a separate page addendum that crystal clear says this, and that they have to initial each section. One section is going to say, you have to continue scaling this company. That's all that matters. Go, grow. Next, you have to respond to us quickly, because we do have one where they're dilly-dallying around, and I'm our seller, and they're in transaction. I'm what is going on? You have to act, respond within this certain amount of time, and then it's going to be an emotional roller coaster. It's going to be. So they got to initial all 3 of these paragraphs on one piece of paper, so that's not buried in our long contract. It's in there, but guys, I don't know how much clearer I can make this up front to kind of prepare them for the journey. But yeah, no, good points on that.
Yeah, I love that. That was super interesting, actually. Not where I thought the conversation was going to go, but yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, M&A is a series of like relationships, and, you know, there's processes within the relationship that people have to move through emotionally to get to whatever that next stage is. So if there's someone there that can kind of help grease the wheels in terms of moving through those processes relationally, so important. Should we kind of shift directions and focus more on SaaS for the remainder of this conversation?
Well, that's the name of the podcast, so we better. Let's do
Yeah, we
it.
better. I mean, I could keep jamming on this forever,
This
but
this just straight M&A stuff is totally super on point still. But yeah, let's talk about some SaaS. I'm down.
yeah. So, Christine, we have heard of the many businesses that you've worked on, but tell us about the SaaS business that you built.
Yep. So I started a software company in 2018, immediately got two technical co-founders because I didn't know much about software back then. So we launched Kindred, which was a software platform. It's like a PMS, like property management software system specifically for co-living, which was kind of up and coming. And I was even co-living with some entrepreneurs, and it was just this amazing way of living. And it still is, and it's international. And then I published the first book on it. So automatically I was like an influencer expert, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I didn't want to be, but I was speaking around the world and getting paid to speak about co-living. And then I had my weekly YouTube, which is still up, the Co-Living Coach Show, and interviewed, founders from around the world in the co-living industry. So Kindred, I got us into Techstars within 4 months flat, which is crazy. And it was Techstars Amsterdam. So I got to move to Amsterdam. I was there for 5 months in 2019 maybe. And I was up in West LA at the time before I moved. And tech was just like booming. I was working at the WeWork and in West LA by Santa Monica, and just the energy.
I
and
love that we work.
Excitement. Yes, it was insane. Like, it was so much fun. Like, I'll never forget it, but I would overhear these conversations of somebody interviewing somebody, giving them a shitty offer, but then promising them all this equity, that never came into fruition. Right. But these people bought into it. Right. So I listen to the conversations. I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. Insane valuations that didn't even make sense. We didn't go VC. I had pitched to a lot of them, but I just did not want to go that route. We went angels. I was very fortunate to be connected, and I had a great track record, right? So they're betting on the jockey, not the horse necessarily. So great track record. So I got angels. I think I had 5 on my cap table. Then I had Techstars in also. And yeah, we went further in, you always have a limit of okay, we're going to put this much. And I had 6 figures into it, right? So I had skin in the game, and I sold my R8 because the friggin' software company needed more money. So, but again, I'm always willing to do whatever it takes. So 3 years.
Did you sell pre-revenue?
We sold.
You raised pre-revenue.
We never hit revenue in 3 years. We never hit revenue. And that's what was I'm a salesperson. I'm a marketer. You're talking to somebody that sells before I open the doors. I sold $25,000 worth of spa memberships before signing the lease. So we were from day one, I already have money rolling in before we even opened. So that's I'm all about that. But to have 3 years of not being able to sell something because we were building it, it was so much money to build this technology, because it was also global directory for co-living. So we went too wide, and even my co-founders knew in hindsight, we went too wide on the building out the technology versus going deep. It was the most stressful 3 years of my life by far. And that was, it was my dream to start a tech company. It was going to be my last business. I was like, I want to build what kind of business? What's the biggest business I could do? International tech company. Okay.
And you sold in 2021, right?
We sold October 2021, but not to a company in LA, but not for what we put in. Not what we put in.
Got it.
But then, I've always bootstrapped. The pressure of having investors, I'll never do that again. There's no way. That's not my style. It's very uncomfortable. It puts a lot of pressure on me unnecessarily. So I jumped into business brokerage right when we sold, right? I was already doing it. So I was getting great big commission checks, and I actually paid most of my angels off. Some of them had such big hit. Again, it was 29, they had such big hits on some of their exits that in their portfolios, because they had other companies, that they're like, hey, Christine, it's fine. I'll take the 40%, tax write-off on the $100,000. So they were like, I'll just take the tax write-off. I need it anyways. It's fine. It was a gamble. They were super cool. But a lot of them, I paid back like 6 figures total, I think, from my commission checks. I just was like slamming the checks over because I just have to sleep at night. So it was weird. I don't know. But I feel better.
It sounds like this business so in the beginning of the interview, you shared that you don't usually really grieve about businesses, but it feels like there's something different about this business. Is that accurate?
Grief, that's great. Like tapping in, Omeed, to like, what emotion do I have? I have like PTSD. That's
I felt that.
Yeah, it's not grief. I'm not grieving. I'm glad, because this is what happened, which is so crazy, is that and Lauren, my right hand, she's been with me for 5 years through 3 companies, right? So she saw it all. And I kept saying, Lauren, if we don't hit revenue by this date, then I'm shutting it down. But I physically could not, I've never shut a business down. I literally physically could not. It was so weird. So then I would extend the date. We raised another 100 grand in the middle of COVID in July. I said, this is it. I was like, if we don't hit revenue by the end of the year, done, like close down. Then that didn't happen. So then I start personally carrying the burn rate. Like we kind of like made it idle. No more investing in the engineers and anything. So there was but just our hard costs. I just paid personally for another, I don't even know, another year or something. So I just could not, even though it was costing me, I had no money, maxed out credit cards. It was like the worst time of my life, but I just could not shut it down. And then thank God, finally October, so like a whole year after I was supposed to shut it down, these guys came in. I just didn't, so I guess it worked out, but in some sense, but yeah, it's PTSD.
And why did they buy?
They actually have a co-living operation in Los Angeles, and they wanted the technology side, and they also wanted the brand. Kindred Quarters was like my physical location brand I had at the beginning, and then Kindred was the technology behind it. And so mainly for those reasons, and they kind of folded it in. I know I haven't followed it. The website is down, which is frustrating. So I don't know what's going on with them. I haven't talked to them in a while.
Sounds like you still check on it.
I haven't lately. I know, but I shouldn't. I don't know why I even do. Well, I do because out of all my businesses,
it's the one that got away.
Yeah. Well, only 2 out of all my companies, only one other one has shut down. They're all in business to this day, which is crazy. I'm so proud of that more than anything, that I built companies that to this day are still around.
But I think it's important to focus on that, because selling in that type of situation, I mean, this is such a vivid area to really break into. So, I mean, you had some issues, you wanted to sell it. These people came about. Tell me more detail about how all this happened.
There's a juicy story in there and
it'll be helpful because sometimes sellers need to know, hey, I need to pull the trigger, or this is how it can be done. I don't just have to close shop and everybody lose everything and see my baby die. There's definitely important lessons there.
Yes. I mean, if there's code and IP, maybe that's valuable. If it's an acqui-hire, if they want your team, that happens a lot. Yeah, because you're right. People just shut doors and they don't even know they have assets, right? So especially 2 years ago when the hiring was so hard, we were seeing people acquire companies just for the team, because it was literally the only way they could get engineers and team members.
That's true.
Those are acqui-hires. Yeah, so those are acqui-hires. Is it the software, is the IP they want? So they're going to weigh okay, it's going to take us 2 years and this much money to build out this technology, or can we buy it and shortcut it? Is that worth it? So they weigh those options. Yeah. So during all that freaking hell, I was like, universe, what are you trying to teach me? Because I'm always there's got to be a lesson in here. During those 3 years, I couldn't figure it out. But now, obviously, in the Magnolia Firm, that's the companies we work with. So I know this whole world. I know how to raise capital. I know software technology, and I can speak their language. So this is the payoff from that 3 years.
That's what I resonate with that so much too. It's all the experiences that I've had in the software space that have contributed to me being hey, Joe, let's be SaaS acquisitions lawyers, because of all this history and love and passion that we have for the things that we've built, that we've been involved in, that we've supported, that we've helped along the way. So yeah, I totally resonate with everything that you shared there in terms of, the universe was getting you to a place to kind of prime you to play in that space.
Yeah, and I mean, it was my dream. And all that. I mean, we even had a $9.2 million acquisition offer from Germany on the table that I saw, and that was 10 months in. Like, how do you even get that pre-revenue? Is insane. I signed it. 2 weeks later, I walked from the whole deal. That's a whole nother story. And I don't regret that, right? I don't. So like, it was just such like a wild ride learning experience. So I definitely don't regret doing it. I think the only part I probably regret is doing that extra year. I think in 2 years in, I should just like pull the plug.
You mean where you were carrying the burn rate of the business for that period of time?
When we raised that last $100,000 during COVID.
Yeah.
And I don't use COVID as, that would have been the perfect excuse. I could just be like, oh, COVID took my company out. But that wasn't the truth. So I never said that. But I probably shouldn't have raised that $100K July 2020.
I want to talk about that, but also first I want to kind of take a step back a little bit about something you raised, which is that, sometimes people want to buy code or just the assets of a business, even if it's a fire sale or the business isn't doing great, it can still have assets, and founders need to be aware of that. But there's a big problem there. It's like, well, I have code or maybe something that's not complete in development. How do I possibly solicit that or solicit a buyer for that thing? And how are they even able to look in at what I have to determine if it's something they want to buy? Is there anything you can tell about your story there or other experience that can help explain how that process goes for people?
For sure. So it's tech due diligence. And like my CTO is German, and he's like, they both of them over engineered. Like, when you go in the code, people like the people looking in. So what you do in the tech due diligence part is obviously they have their tech person, they get with my CTO and they did the tech due diligence, and they were super organized. Like our code was so freaking clean. It was just super over engineered, like insanely. Like everybody that saw it said that, but it was organized. So yeah, it's just making sure, can we take this over? Can we continue building on it? What language is it in, right? Or are we going to switch it to a different type of language, coding language? Like, are we going to have to throw it all out and start over, which is a waste? And there are, if you guys want to go, everybody listening, onto acquire.com, you can find deals on there. And those are the freaking engineers. Those are the programmers that had this brilliant idea and they built this really cool, app or tech. And they're not salespeople. They're not business people. So you can, so they have it, it's ready to go. It might even be generating a little bit of revenue, but then they're stuck. They're like, I don't know how to sell this or get clients. So I like, again, I try to stay off of it because I don't need to buy any more businesses. It's like women like shoes. I like businesses. I would like buy 1 million of them. But people listening, you can get a killer deal if you come across these programmers. And sometimes they just they're like, oh, I'm bored. I made this, but I'm jumping to the next thing. I want to program and build. And so that's kind of a fun way to start.
Okay, no, that's super insightful. And just to follow up a little bit on there, because I have another question, which is, so in your case, did you already know the potential buyer? Did you have a broker? How did you kind of make that gap from, okay, we have this thing and there's this, there's a sale that's going to happen?
Yeah, no broker. Remember, Joe? I don't use brokers.
I didn't think so, but I wanted to ask.
I was the broker. I had a really incredible network in the world, like around the world, of all the co-living companies, all the founders, all the developers, anybody that had to do anything with co-living. We had, how many episodes would we have? 52, 150 like leaders in the space I brought onto my show. And this is before like podcasting got so trendy, like 5 years ago or whatever. So they were on my show so I could reach out to, so I put the word out like crazy. Like, hey, we need to exit. Let's have conversations. Let's open the doors. It's going to be somebody in the space. I was just surprised it was an actual developer that needed the technology. I thought maybe it would be another tech company.
That's super cool. Okay, that's awesome. So you basically did hey, I'm going to reach out to people I already know. Did you put together any any documents, or did you just start off a conversation with, hey guys, I'm trying to start a conversation about this?
I always do a sim. I always do a slide deck, even for my spa I did. It blows my mind that people make some fancy, super fancy pitch deck to raise capital, but they don't do it when they exit. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like even these companies for sale, a lot of them are these boring 2-page white paper sims, and we do these gorgeous decks. Like people are visual. So no, I did a deck for sure.
No, that's awesome. That's really great for people to know though, because when you're in the arena or when you're in that situation, your mind's not, well, I'm kind of making generalizations here, but many people, their minds aren't processing and they're kind of lost and they're like, what the hell do I do? So just kind of taking a step back and being like, okay, I'm going to prepare a sim, which is really just a proposal, or what is the business? What are you selling for how much? And tell me about it. That's
and what
really
are the assets, right? The domain names are more assets. So it's like you have to do this, at the list of assets, the IP, it's not physical furniture and equipment, FF&E. It's not, it's software, it's tech, but there still are assets.
Yeah, exactly. You need to kind of put that all together and then kind of communicate out there. So you started some conversations. Then I guess then you got a buyer. I just don't have any further questions about that. I just think it's really
I actually do.
Okay, I'll throw it over to you then. Yeah, that's good for me.
Yeah. So you had this amazing network of, you're clearly like a fantastic networker, great salesperson. You had this network that you built in LA. You've been reporting the burn rate of the business for the last year in terms of, core expenses. For example, you had pushed the deadline to shut the business down for an entire year, where you shouldered those expenses. During that time, it sounds like you had raised some additional capital. So walk us through. A year has gone by. You've shouldered all the expenses. How did you find, did you just blast out a cold email to your entire network? Like, hey, we're selling. Were you at a cocktail party and you saw someone that you knew that was in the co-living space and you're like, oh man, shit's not going well with, our PM. Like, what did that look like?
It was 3 years ago. I'm trying to remember. I mean, it was personalized reach out, right? It wasn't a blast. It was me reaching out individually for interest. And I'm trying to remember I don't know the reason. I don't know what I said as far as okay, I can't make this work, or we're looking at why were we looking at exiting? Probably because I couldn't hit revenue. So I'm sure that's probably what I said, because that's the truth. Yeah, so it was just some individual reach outs to each and every person in my network. I'd be curious to remember how many I reached out to. I know in raising capital, I pitched over 200 times. Like that, I know. As far as me trying to sell the company, how many people did I talk to? I can't remember exactly. But yeah, just getting the word out.
No, I hear you there. No, that's just valuable to kind of know what your process there was. That's definitely insightful. Why don't we go ahead now? And gosh, this was a really good conversation. I think it was a lot of really valuable information for people selling their first business or being in that type of situation, to know what the right thing is to do, or for just buyers and those points for buyers that we've touched on here. But why don't we move to a close? And Omeed, in case there's something else you want to talk about, why don't you take us through?
Yeah, Christine, do you have a tip of the day for us, for our listeners?
Yeah, I briefly said it earlier. I'll say it again, is going on acquire.com. Those guys are great. Going on Flippa is another one. I'd say those two platforms. And again, because you'd be shocked at the deals you can find, right? Everything's negotiable. It never hurts to lowball a business. Of course, I'm on the seller side. People do it to me, but I stay strong. But when I buy companies, I'm definitely coming in real low just to see where they stand. And they might do seller financing. They might do 100% seller financing because they want out. And this is great for even SaaS founders with current companies, because again, you might find a bolt-on, or you could grab market share, or you might need that piece of technology still. So I think the SaaS founders can go look at those platforms. I think people that are looking to acquire, I could be on those platforms for hours and hours. I don't go on them because I know I could go down the rabbit hole, but that would be my tip of the day.
Thanks, Christine. Thanks so much for joining us on today's episode of SaaS Buyers Club. Where can people find you? Is there anything that you want to share with people in closing?
LinkedIn is always my LinkedIn is always the best way to get a hold of me. Shoot me a message anytime. We do have the Magnolia Firm. We have a book club that's starting. I don't know when this is airing, but it starts on September 7th, but it's one chapter each week. So you can join us anytime, every Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific time. And it's 1 hour, one chapter. And it's Alex Hormozzi's $100 million leads. Yeah, right. I know his other one's offers. because we already did the other offer, No Meets Book Club. So definitely join us for that, no charge. We have the Rapid Acquisition Club, which we just had today. First Wednesday of every month, we actually bring founders on, anywhere from 3 to 5 that are looking to exit. A lot of these are pocket listings, and for whatever reason, we can't take them on. Maybe they're too small, maybe we're at capacity. So we bring them on, they present for 7 minutes, a slide deck, and then it's like a friendly Shark Tank. All the buyers in the club get to ask questions in real time. So that's every Wednesday, 8 a.m. Pacific time. Socials, we are on all the platforms, the Magnolia Firm, and I have an Omeed Knows. I have a fun character called Broker Bob on there where I dress up as an old man and I make fun of brokers. So, and they're like true stories. That's what's so funny. I'll go to the conference and I literally overhear this stuff and I'm like, oh my God, like this is so perfect for a skit. And I just make these little fun skits in my my free time. So those are on Instagram.
That's really cool. By the way, just to get clear there, where can people get access to the Shark Club or find that? How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the Rapid Acquisition Club is on our website. So you can go, it's very clear on the website, themagnoliafirm.co.
Okay, and does it include so it's the magnoliafirm.co?
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make that explicit. All right, then. Well, that's awesome. Well, people know how to get a hold of you. It's been a really big pleasure, and we thank you so much for being on today. This information your wisdom shared today was very insightful, and we hope that it helps a lot of people out there who listen to this. So thanks for your time, and it was good to talk to you.
Yeah, same here, you guys. Thanks again for having me on.